Hi everybody, what's going on? Welcome to Sit Down. I'm DJ Sixsmith. Pleased to be joined by Melody Herzfeld, Amy Schatz. You guys have Song of Parkland. Thank you very much for coming in today.
Thank you.
Of course.
Thank you.
So Amy, let's start off with you. Just describe how this whole project came together. Obviously, we know what happened at Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School last year. So when did this all begin for you?
Well, directly after the shooting, I think all of our eyes were on Parkland. The children in my life, the children across the country, people were watching. And since I make shows for kids, the question was, is there some story we could tell down there for kids, featuring kids, about their resilience, about their strength, about their fears. So the question was, could we go down there and tell some story that was different from what we had been hearing in the news, and to create a portrait of a population of kids. So that was the journey. That's how it began. And we met, and I learned about the work that Melody was doing with her class, and that on the day of the shooting she had been in rehearsals for a children's show. So that was the beginning of our conversation. It was about that work on the children's show and what would happen next. Would they continue? Would they be able to pick up where they left off?
Right. And Melody, you guys just have an incredible program, a great group of kids. So when you think about your life the past year, I mean, there's a lot to unpack there, but you know, what was it like kind of reliving all these different parts of it through the documentary?
You know, part of the reason why I agreed to listen to Amy was because I knew that what was happening at that moment with my theater kids was very important. And it's, you know, in theater, when we teach about acting, we say, you know, all the moments and all the emotions that you're going through at that time in your life, whatever happens to you in your life, you hold on to them. You keep them. You sometimes cultivate them because you need to use them for a performance or whatever. So I knew that really kind of painting this picture of an accurate portrait of what was happening at the time was very important for the kids also to remember, and for the community and the world and our country to see what was really happening at that time. So, I mean, it's not like I was sitting around with a camera, you know, just documenting everything with the kids.
Right.
It's not what I do. I teach kids. So having this opportunity to share what I knew would be very helpful in the long run, it was very difficult to do and to open up from, but with Amy's, you know, her mannerism and her heart that was in it and behind it, and how she was so delicate and gentle with her approach, it just seemed right to do that. And we were lucky to have someone that cared enough that said, this is an important story to tell.
Yeah.
So a lot has happened.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And for both of you guys, I like how you were able to get the most out of the kids, you on the stage and you just with the documentary. And we were talking before, you know, these are kids, they're 15, 16, they're still trying to figure out their lives. But I kind of liked how you had this open format. Kids are just sitting there and they're just kind of reflecting. So how did you both get the most out of the kids in that really delicate situation?
Well, it was optional that they participate. Melody invited them to come in on a Sunday, right? And
it's a big group for a Sunday.
It was a big group.
Yeah.
They came, and
We were rehearsing too.
They,
So
they
had a reason
they
to be
had other
there.
business there, and we just sat and we talked. It was very low key. It wasn't, and I work very stealthily with just a director of photography who's with me with the camera, and so it was low key. It was just a camera and me and the kids and Melody, and we weren't sure what the film would be about, so it was very casual. It was about, the first conversation was, you know, what are you working on today? What are you rehearsing? And the question of how did you make the decision to go on with the show, right? That's the first conversation we had.
I think because of Amy and Alex as director of photography, it's their bedside manner,
Right.
if you will, like how they relate, and you know, there was nothing to want from it except to give them a forum. If nothing were to come from it, I think it was very healthy for our kids to at least have a discussion, because we had kids that had not left their room in days, like literally in days. And for them to come out of that silence and just know that someone wanted to hear them, I think is a very important thing too. And if something, you know, were to come from this that it could show them in a positive light, then it's a good thing.
Oh, absolutely, and it most certainly does, and it really is inspiring because, like you say, like the show must go on, right?
Right.
And life is going to be good again, but it's so hard to say that, and it's another thing to do it. So when you guys did make the decision to get back and do the show, what were those toughest moments in the initial days and weeks?
I don't think there were any tough moments. When my kids said, okay, we're doing it, they were like waiting
Full
for the
speed ahead?
schedule.
Gotcha.
It was like, okay, we're going to do this. Because they didn't have like this agenda. It was like so many of them were so worried that they wouldn't be able to come back to school and that they'd lose everything that they had worked so hard for.
Right.
I had one junior at the time crying her eyes out, scared for the kids that were going and speaking very publicly, scared for them, saying, I don't understand, why do they want to leave school? Why don't they want to come? You know, there were definitely a handful that weren't coming to school as regularly as they should. And, you know, she was so scared and frightened that, like, frightened for them, like, I want everything to go back to the way it was. Like, I've worked so hard for these were her words, I've worked so hard for everything I've done this year as a junior, which is a huge year.
Oh, monster year, yeah.
Why are they, I can't imagine like throwing it away. And kids actually feel pressured that if they're not joining in with what the majority are doing, they feel like they are, you know, going against the group. And that's not what any of them wanted to do. Just because they decided collectively as a group to go on with the show did not mean that they were turning their backs on their friends that were part of March for Our Lives or any of the community. It was just that they too have dreams, they too have a life, and their life is very important. And I think that's what I was trying to tell them, that you can't just throw everything away. We can throw everything away for like a small moment because we're very upset about what's happened and it's very painful. These are friends, some of them were best friends of our kids, our colleagues that we've known for years and years and years. You just don't stop living, and you just, there was no other better advice that I could give them. And I'm kind of straight shooter, and I'm kind of a little more aggressive in my stance. So I was like, okay, then let's go in this and let's do it 100%. Yeah. So.
Yeah, and I mean, you say in the doc, speak your truth, and I think that really comes across. And you know, even when you think back to February 14th of last year, you know, in the doc you show that tech room where you guys were, and just your ability to keep those kids strong in that room until they got out. I mean, I can't even imagine how you were able to do that. So
well, listen, I am only this much of their life. And even though they spend probably 8 to 10 hours in my classroom every day, more time at home, less time at home than they do in the classroom, they very much rely on each other too for their strength, because it's a kind of class where they loop together year to year to year. It's not unusual for a 9th grader to be best friends with a 12th grader or a 10th grader to be best friends with an 11th grader, because they stay in the same class for years and years and years together. So if there was any day that this could have happened, like, it was perfect for us in a sense that because they had the strongest allies with them on that day. And if it was any other day, half the kids would have been in that building, and we don't know how it would have turned out.
Well, even the fact that you waited a little longer to get out of there, too. I mean, that's a significant detail. So
it's like I think of it like as a little bicycle lock, you know, where you line up all the numbers, and if you don't line them up right, you're not going to open the lock, and everything in this very grotesque way lined up perfectly that day.
I totally understand.
To keep you safe.
Yeah.
Yeah, no question. So Amy, you had obviously watched the coverage. When you went to Parkland for the first time, what were some things that you learned about the community? What surprised you about the community? You know, what was it like immersing yourself in that world after seeing it all unfold?
Well, the most stunning thing was this person here. You know, you underestimate your role, I think, in terms of the influence you have on these kids.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think you kept them safe, you kept them calm, you kept them focused on, you know, also the business of making theater, which was really helpful to them. So in some sense, the film is a love letter to the teachers in the world, you know, who,
we need those teachers, that's for sure.
Inspire our kids, and not only kept them physically safe, but also kept them steady and focused and thinking about the business of your theater production. So that was a big takeaway from me, is just how important our teachers are, and particularly this one, to her community.
And teachers that keep it real also, because you got some teachers that'll just try and pat you on the back. You're not one of those teachers.
No.
So how did you develop that mentality? Have you always been like that as a drama teacher?
Yes.
I feel like, it's just second nature for you, right?
The one thing I've always told my kids, like when we do a comedy or whatever, if they can hear me laugh, I can't fake a laugh. I can never fake a laugh. Fake laughing doesn't exist.
No.
Like my emotions are always very real, and I think it's part of like who I am. But this is, I think one teacher in my life, maybe 2 or 3 in my life, has said, "Be you, always be you," and those are the lessons that I've held dear. And what is your truth? Do your truth right now in this moment. All the acting training that you have, from my background, that was one takeaway for me, and it absolutely is a takeaway for life. And if you can't be that person who you are truthfully, like
who else are you?
Who else are you? And kids are extremely perceptive. They know when you're a liar.
Yep. They can call BS.
They can call it out in a second. And when you're honest and you're real, they call it out too, and they know it. And they may not like everything that I have to say, and that's okay.
That's life. You just roll with it. So you mentioned those real moments. One of the best moments of the doc was the Tony Awards and watching that performance. I mean, you lived it, you put it together in the doc. What was it like for you to reflect on that, and how important was it to incorporate it into the story?
Well, a documentary is open-ended. You don't know what the story is until you get into the edit room. And we weren't sure what the ending was. Was the ending opening night? We were working on it and trying to figure out, what's the journey that this film takes.
And that hadn't been announced.
It hadn't been announced.
Oh, wow.
So it was a secret thing. And so I found out about it when you were on your way to New York for it. And no one knew the kids were coming, right? They kept that was a secret.
Couldn't say a word.
So I called or texted you and said, can we film you in Times Square while you were here? So we had an ending scene for the film, and I think it's perfect because it's an acknowledgement of your, what you did under incredible stress, and also the beauty of these performers, the talent. It shows how incredible they are, and resilient, and musical, and strong, and beautiful. So.
And incredibly talented, also.
They're so
unreal.
Really great.
Yeah.
They really are great.
As so many kids in
and
this.
So many are great. Like, it was very difficult. Like, I knew that when the producers asked me, can you get 10 kids together to do the Tony Awards? I said, only 10? Like, this is going to be really hard. And I actually said, I go, what about like 20? Because I looked at my roster, I'm like, 20 definitely sing really well, And then they go, well, what about 15? I go, let's just even it with 16. Like an even 16.
Always pushing for a little bit more.
And they said yes. Everybody just said yes. Everybody said yes to the moment. And I knew I had to make a decision that was going to be a really hard decision. Now it's becomes like the audition process in a sense, which I didn't do. I selected them. And I knew my kids well enough to know that if I said, no, we can't do it, everybody will feel like they're unfair. I know that they would have said, no way, Herzfeld, we wouldn't have worried who you selected, we wouldn't have cared. So I knew that they would have wanted me to choose.
And they didn't know about it.
They didn't know. They only knew one by one when I first called the parents first to ask for their permission. And then I called them. It took me 2 days to call all of them to make sure that everybody was okay to do it. And then I told them they couldn't let anybody know about it. And it's a very hard thing when you're left out. It is hard. Because you're feeling like, well, now something tragic's happened. Why am I getting left out in this? Like, why? All of that stuff was happening. And I wasn't looking to do that. But I knew that it was an honorable thing to be asked to do this, a once-in-a-lifetime thing. And I had to kind of just say, all right, as a mom, what would I do? They're going to have to understand and know that I love them still. Right,
and your kids, and like you said, there's things that they're not going to want to hear sometimes, but this is a perfect example of hearing those things.
Yeah.
So definitely some interesting stuff there. So as we come up to the 1-year anniversary of everything that happened. I mean, obviously watching the documentary, a lot of visceral reaction. So when people watch it, when people think about February 14th, what do you both want them to just think about in the totality of the event, the kids, and the documentary?
I guess seeing that that these kids are real human beings. So many of them were criticized for being, you know, crisis actors, which is
Ridiculous.
ridiculous. And how fragile they were, and how even though as fragile as they were, they're very strong individuals. It's never going to be the same that day for any person ever again. It's hard for us to even look when you go into the drugstore and you start seeing hearts and flowers and stuff. And just to remember that this is going to be a tough time for them, like forever. Like any bad thing that would happen in life, but it's such like a massive thing. How do they get through it? I think the lead up to it will be worse than the day of, possibly. But we all have to face it kind of together, or maybe separately, depending. But you're talking about, you know, over 3,000 people that are affected in some way, plus the surrounding communities that are affected about it, you know, by it and somehow. I don't know, like, what the day's going to bring or how we're going to feel. We're just going to improvise and take it day by day and know that everybody's emotions are high, and keep working, keep doing what we do, keep them steady, keep them in a positive, productive kind of way. So that's what we're doing back home, because we are in production for something. So we just keep going the steady path. And along the way, when we have these bumps, we just are sensitive to them. I think that's what we're going to be doing.
I gotcha. And Amy, for you, when people check it out?
I mean, I guess to me, the listening to kids is the motto. Let's listen to our kids. Let's listen to their poems. Let's listen to their fears. Let's listen to their songs.
Yeah, beautiful songs.
Let's listen to them because they have something to say that's about the world we live in. And that to me is the most precious thing we have, really, is our kids. And if we can listen to them and we can address their concerns, then we're living a responsible life. So that's one of the things that I think about.
Gotcha. So when can people check this out on HBO?
So the premiere is on February 7th at 7 o'clock, and then it's actually streaming on HBO.com, and it will be on HBO platforms forever, I hope. Thank you so much.
Very good. Melody,
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very
Pleasure
much
meeting
for having
Amy.
us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, we'll see you next time here on The Sit Down.